Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not a hero or a legend. You're a woman born into the warrior class of feudal Japan, which is a poetic way of saying you're expected to die quietly, preferably after childbirth, or before embarrassing your husband, but your mother teaches you the naginata anyway, not for glory, but for when the men inevitably fail, you won't be remembered. Not because you lacked skill, but because history only kept room for the ones with deeper voices. Before we unsheath anything sharp, do me a small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I like knowing who's drifting off to these grim bedtime tales. And if you'd like early access to future stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back. Get comfortable. Let's begin. You were born into a house that smells like lacquered wood, pressed silk, and carefully withheld disappointment. The women who assist your mother murmur soft congratulations when they see your face, but their eyes don't light up. No celebratory sake, no temple offering for strength. Just a quiet nod and a swift return to their duties. Outside, the pine trees remain still, as if embarrassed on your behalf. You are a daughter, not a legacy, not a name carrier, not a future general. A complication. Your father doesn't say a word to you for the first 3 days of your life. That's not a punishment, just a ritual. There's a brief hope you won't survive the week. Girls, after all, are delicate things, prone to fevers, to misfortune, to being more trouble than they're worth. But you do survive. You eat well, you sleep soundly, you do not cry too much. The household adapts, if reluctantly. You are fed, you are dressed, and you are largely ignored. Your name is chosen not for strength or wisdom, but for its graceful sound and poetic association with a flower that dies beautifully. That, apparently, is the best you can hope for. Beauty and obedience, followed by a tasteful absence. You are swaddled in patterned cloth and handed to wet nurses, then to maidservants, and finally to tutors who are instructed to teach you only what's necessary. Reading, so you can write polite letters. Etiquette, so you don't embarrass the family. Poetry, in case you're fortunate enough to marry a man who cares whether you understand it. Nothing too serious, nothing that might give you ideas. When you're old enough to walk without assistance, your father observes you from across the garden and remarks to no one in particular that your steps are too loud. You learn to move like steam, soundless and unremarkable. Your voice becomes soft by design. You smile when you're supposed to, bow when expected, and vanish when required. No one asks what you want. No one tells you why your brother gets a horse and you get a loom. It's just the order of things. The cherry blossoms fall, the roof is retiled every 3rd year, and girls become wives. That's what happens. And yet, there is your mother. She is not soft. She wears her silence like a second kimono, layered, structured, hiding things beneath it. She rarely raises her voice, never contradicts your father in public, and always lowers her eyes at the appropriate times. But her movements are practiced, her posture disciplined. Her gaze, when it meets yours, is too direct to be harmless. She is not the kind of woman who leaves footprints in the dirt. She is the kind who buries them. One night, when you're perhaps 5, small enough that your hair still tangles like a bird's nest and your fingers are sticky from rice, your mother calls you into the storehouse. She doesn't explain why, she doesn't speak at all. The air smells like oil and dried persimmons. There's a crate against the wall covered with cloth. She pulls it open and lifts something out. Long, curved and wrapped in dark fabric. The weight of it shifts as she kneels beside you. She does not smile. It is a naginata, a weapon that belongs more to women than men, though no one says it that way aloud. It is a tool of elegance and violence, of defense and refusal. Your mother doesn't say what it's for. She doesn't need to. You've heard the stories whispered by the servants, passed down like a ghost with too much pride to rest. The onna-musha, women of the samurai class who stood guard when the men were away, who bled in silence, who died without songs, the ones who were useful, but not remembered. Your mother's fingers adjust your grip as if she's done this before. You can't lift it properly. Of course you can't. You're a child, but she doesn't take it away. She just watches you struggle with it, arms shaking, blade tip dragging against the floor, until she gently tilts it back into place. You look up at her expecting approval or correction, or even a story, but she only nods once. Not encouragement, confirmation, a quiet contract. Later, as you lie awake on your straw mat, staring at the ceiling beams, you think about the weight of the naginata. It wasn't just the wood and the steel, it was the way your mother's hands moved without hesitation, the way she didn't have to think about where her feet should go, the way she looked at you like something she was shaping, not protecting. You are not being prepared for war. Not really. That would suggest the possibility of glory. You are being prepared for survival, for shame, for when the walls crack and the men do not return. No one will celebrate you, but someone somewhere might live because you held your ground. That is what women like your mother are allowed. Not legacy, endurance. The next morning, nothing is said. No training is scheduled. You resume your lessons in calligraphy and how to refill a guest's teacup without splashing. But your mother summons you again the following night, and the one after that, and the one after that. Each time she places the naginata in your hands. Each time she adjusts your stance with fewer corrections. She never tells you you're doing well. She never praises your balance or the way you remember to breathe from your core. She simply watches and nods. When you finally manage a clean swing, arm steady, blade arcing through empty air with a whisper instead of a thud, she lets you hold it for a long moment afterward. Your arms ache, your knees tremble slightly, and you wait for some kind of acknowledgement. She takes the weapon from you, wipes the blade, and sets it back in the crate. Then she places it in your hands again, and still, she does not smile. You learn balance before you learn how to read. Your mother makes sure of that. Before sunrise, before the servants are awake, before your father begins his morning meditation, you're out on the dew-slick stones of the garden path with a wooden pole, twice your height and 3 times your patience. You're not strong yet, not quick, not clever with your movements, but you can stay upright. That's the first lesson. Fall and someone sees you. Be seen and the lesson ends. By mid-morning, your world becomes smaller. You serve tea, you sweep floors, you bow at the right times, and keep your eyes respectfully lowered during your brother's archery lessons, though you could describe his footwork errors in vivid detail from memory alone. The calligraphy instructor praises your posture. The poetry tutor says you have a good ear. The seamstress says you're better with a blade than a needle, but only once, and then never again. That comment disappears like all inappropriate things do in your household, behind a wall of silence, with no funeral. You begin to crave the weight of the naginata, not because it empowers you, but because it makes the rest of the day feel slightly less unbearable. When your mother calls you to the storehouse, you slip through the shadows like you were born in them. Each lesson is quiet and precise. She corrects your grip, your stance, your breathing. She does not explain why a woman must learn these things. She doesn't need to. The unspoken is louder than any philosophy. One day, someone will come to the gate, and you will be expected to stop them. That is all. Sometimes you ask questions the way children do. Why must you train when the men are away? Why must you hide it? Why is it always you, and not your sister, or your cousin, or one of the maids? Your mother answers with silence, or worse, with that look. The one that says, plainly, that she already made her peace with the rules, and has no energy left to pretend otherwise. There's no romantic story, no ancient legacy, just necessity. Just the understanding that when houses fall, someone has to be standing in the rubble. As you grow taller, so does the blade. Your wooden pole is replaced by something heavier, sharper, wrapped in faded silk at the grip to muffle the sound of your swings. You're not supposed to use it, not really. It's ceremonial, decorative, but your mother replaces the dull edge when no one is looking, and you both pretend not to notice. You strike hay dummies in the barn, with more intent than ceremony. Your shoulders develop muscle, your legs grow steady. You begin to move with the economy of someone who understands how not to waste energy or hope. You learn the art of compartmentalization, one life in the open, full of proper bows, demure smiles, and soft recitations of classical verse, and another behind closed doors, where your hands blister and your back aches and your mother ties your hair tight so it won't fall into your eyes during a strike. It's not glamorous, it's not noble. There are no songs about the girl who practices killing and then serves pickled radish at dinner. But the dissonance becomes a kind of rhythm, and rhythm becomes habit. You begin to notice the way your brothers speak of battle, loudly, eagerly, like it's a tournament or a parade. They practice sword forms in the courtyard, their ki sharp and overpronounced. They throw each other to the ground for sport and call it training. No one ever tells them to be quiet. No one ever tells them not to sweat through their robes or dirty the floor. When your brother bruises his knuckles, he shows everyone at the table like it's a trophy. When you split the skin on your palm, you soak the cloth in water until the blood fades and say nothing. One afternoon, while trimming the pine branches outside your father's study, you overhear him speaking with a guest. Another samurai, older, pompous, full of tales. They're laughing. The guest says something about women with weapons, and your father replies, "A woman's weapon is silence." The men laugh harder. You clip the branch a little too aggressively and get scolded for ruining the shape. That night, your mother makes you repeat stances until your knees give out. Still you improve. You learn to feint. You learn to conserve your strength. You learn that your arms are longer than you thought, and that you don't have to be stronger than someone to outlast them. One morning, your mother lets you lead the warm-up. She doesn't say why. She doesn't say well done. But she doesn't correct you either. You file that away like a secret. Another unspoken truth that matters more than praise. Eventually, the day comes when you're allowed to strike something real. Not hay, not straw, but a training dummy, wrapped in thick rope and weighted with sand. Your mother stands back, arms folded, lips pressed thin. The air smells like summer dust and iron. You lift the naginata, breathe from your belly, and swing. It isn't perfect, but it's clean. The blade slices through the rope, down through the wooden post beneath, and the top half of the dummy tips forward and hits the ground with a thud that echoes in your chest. There's a pause. You turn to look at your mother, expecting something. Her face doesn't move. After a long moment, she walks away, without a word. Later that evening, your father passes you in the garden. He nods once like a man acknowledging the weather. "You're strong," he says, "but remember, you're still a daughter." Then he walks on. You return to the training hall after dark and sweep the floor. The blade rests against the wall, polished and patient. You sit beside it, arms heavy, spine straight, and stare at the cut in the post until the candle burns low. You are not proud. You are not angry. You are simply aware of your skill, of your place, and of the distance between the two. You bleed for the first time on a humid morning in early spring. It's not dramatic. No cramps, no tears, no ceremony. Just a quiet red bloom on the fabric between your legs as you rise from your mat. You change your underclothes, wash in the corner basin, and tell no one. It feels like a secret, but not the good kind. Not the kind that gives you power or pride. This one feels like a trap, sprung silently when you weren't looking. Your mother notices later that day. You don't know how. Perhaps the stiffness in your walk. Perhaps the way your face stays a little too still. She doesn't ask. She only places a folded cloth in your palm and tells you to rest for the evening. No training tonight. You nod and bow and return to your room, but sleep refuses to come. You lie awake with the cloth tucked beneath your sleeping robe, aware of every pulse, every cramp, every inch of distance between what you were yesterday and what you are now. The next morning, the training hall is empty. The naginata remains on its stand untouched. No one says you've stopped, it's simply understood. Your days are quieter. You're offered more lessons in flower arrangement, more time in the kitchens, more chances to embroider phoenixes onto silk napkins no one will ever use. You smile, bow, say thank you. Your feet move through the house like they always have. But something has shifted, and everyone around you pretends not to notice. Your father begins to speak of you in the past tense. She was strong-willed, he says one evening, sipping tea in the garden with a cousin. She used to be quite spirited, but she's maturing now. You sit behind the paper screen, listening as your hands fold linens with mechanical precision. No one asks what you think of this transformation. It's not really yours to own. You're simply being prepared, not for battle, but for transfer. A daughter becomes a bride. That's the way of things. Letters begin to arrive more frequently, sealed with crests you don't recognise. They're not addressed to you, of course. They go to your father's study, where he reads them in silence, and then consults your mother in whispers. You aren't told what they say, but you understand. Names are being exchanged, lines of inheritance discussed, dowries calculated. You folded neatly into an agreement sealed long before you ever swung a blade. You're not being married, you're being allocated. Your mother teaches you how to dress for a wedding, how to kneel without wrinkling the fabric, how to keep your hands still while old men judge your value, like they're examining the grain of a lacquered bowl. She doesn't mention the naginata. It remains in the storehouse, gathering dust beside tools that haven't seen daylight in years. You think of it often, the way it fit your hands, the way it made you feel real. You wonder if it misses you. Then you remind yourself not to be sentimental. Sentiment is a liability. One afternoon, you're invited to join your brothers at archery practice. The request surprises you. You haven't trained in weeks. Your father watches from the porch, flanked by a guest in elegant robes. A minor lord, you're told. A potential match. Your brothers shout and jostle as they fire off crooked arrows and laugh at their own aim. When your turn comes, you draw the bowstring with more precision than you should. Your arrow strikes the target just left of centre, not perfect, but too good to be ignored. The guest raises an eyebrow. Your father chuckles a little too quickly and waves a dismissive hand. She used to be very spirited, he says again, but we've softened those edges. The men laugh. You bow your head, smile gently, and walk back to your place, careful not to meet anyone's eyes. That evening, your mother scolds you for showing off. She doesn't raise her voice. She just folds your obi tighter than usual and says, "You don't need to be impressive anymore, just acceptable." Your engagement is confirmed 2 weeks later. The ceremony is small, private, and unbearably quiet. You kneel beside a painted screen while the terms are read aloud. Not to you, but about you. The man you're promised to is older, already with a child from a previous wife who died of something unspoken. He sends a gift, a folded fan with gold leaf. You are told it is beautiful. You are told to smile when you receive it. You are not told what he expects of you, but you already know. In the days that follow, the household shifts again. Your younger sister inherits your role in the kitchens. Your presence becomes more ornamental. You're told to rest more, to avoid heavy lifting. Your hands, once blistered and calloused, begin to soften. Your naginata remains untouched. One evening, when no one is watching, you open the storehouse and run your fingers along the blade. The metal is still cold, still honest, but it no longer feels like yours. Your wedding robes are delivered by courier, layers of silk so fine you can barely feel them on your skin. You're told the colours are flattering. You're told the cut is elegant. You're told to be grateful. No one asks what you want to wear. You fold the garments carefully, place them beside your futon, and sit in silence until the candle gutters out. When the day comes, you kneel in front of your family's shrine and offer incense to ancestors who never knew your name. Your mother braids your hair with practiced hands. Your father recites a poem about cherry blossoms and fleeting beauty. No one mentions your strength. No one mentions the hours you spent perfecting a downward strike, or the bruises you hid beneath your sleeves. You bow when required. You say the words expected of you. You smile at the appropriate time. But as the betrothal is finalised, as the paper is signed and the incense curls into the rafters, your mind is somewhere else. You're thinking of arteries, the thick ones in the thigh, the thinner ones beneath the jaw, the ones near the wrist that pulse just beneath the skin. You're not thinking of violence, you're thinking of precision, of skill, of all the things that used to matter, and now no longer do. You bow once more, perfectly, and do not look up. You leave your family's gate as a wife, your naginata wrapped in cloth and strapped beneath the cart with the rest of your dowry. No one comments on it. No one checks. It's listed in the inventory as a decorative heirloom, a keepsake from your mother's side. A nod to tradition, not a threat. You bow to your parents and keep your face serene and climb into the cart with the same stillness you've practiced since childhood. The wheels creak, the procession moves forward, and no one looks back. The journey to your new home is long enough to ache, but not long enough to forget. You stare at the passing fields and wonder how many of the farmers have wives who know how to kill. The house itself is modest compared to your father's estate, but still refined, a respectable manor with clean paper walls and carefully raked stones out front. A servant meets you at the gate. She bows low, but her eyes flick over you quickly, calculating. Another woman in the household? Another set of tasks? You're shown to your quarters, offered tea, and left to settle in. Your new husband is away, attending to matters of land and loyalty, you're told. No one says when he'll return. No one seems particularly concerned. You're now part of the household, a piece of the structure. Like a beam or a sliding door, you will hold weight, but quietly. You're expected to become familiar with the staff, oversee the kitchens, and prepare for the arrival of children. That last part is said with a delicate smile, like it's a gift being offered rather than a duty being assigned. The days pass with oppressive politeness. You learn the layout of the house, the rhythms of the servants, the way the wind sounds through the shutters at night. You are greeted with respect, but not affection. No one asks about your past and you don't offer it. Your belongings are unpacked, your robes hung, your fan displayed on a lacquered stand beside your pillow. And under the floorboards, deep beneath the tatami, where no one will look, rests the naginata, still wrapped, still waiting. When your husband finally arrives, it's evening. He enters with little ceremony and speaks more to his retainers than to you. He bows, compliments your composure, and asks whether you're settling in. You say yes. He doesn't ask anything else. His gaze lingers on you for a moment, not cruel, not disinterested, just distant, like a man admiring a scroll he doesn't plan to read. That night, he visits your room, as expected. He's courteous, efficient, detached. The next morning, he's gone before the tea is poured. This becomes the pattern. Days of silence, occasional appearances, an entire marriage held together by obligation and absence. You learn to move around his schedule, to anticipate his moods, to keep the household running without intruding on his affairs. You are praised for your discretion. The servants begin to call you graceful. It's meant as a compliment. You try to take it as one. But underneath the grace, something coils. Not anger. You're too well trained for that. Not even frustration. Just a slow-burning awareness that you're being preserved, not valued, like a scroll on a shelf, like a sword on display. Every time you walk past the garden, you feel your muscles itching. Every time your husband compliments your handwriting, you wonder if he'd still admire you with a split lip and blood on your collar. It's not a pleasant thought, but it's an honest one. Eventually, you return to training. Quietly, carefully. At first, it's just footwork in your chambers, small shifts of weight, pivots hidden within daily tasks. Then shadow strikes in the early morning, when the servants are still asleep. Then practice swings with a broom handle disguised as routine cleaning. The naginata stays hidden, but not forgotten. You unwrap it once a week to oil the blade and check the fittings. It gleams softly in the lamplight, the only thing in the house that seems to recognize you. Your body remembers faster than you expect. The strength returns slowly, but it returns. The calluses begin to reform along your palms. The soreness in your shoulders feels like an old friend. No one notices, or if they do, they don't say anything. Perhaps they think you pace at night because of homesickness. Perhaps they think you handle the broom too tightly because you care about cleanliness. You let them think what they like. Letting people misunderstand you is its own form of power. Months pass, seasons change. Your husband leaves for increasingly long stretches of time. There are whispers of regional unrest, of shifting allegiances, of war on the horizon. You are not consulted. You are simply expected to manage the household in his absence. You do so with precision. The rice is stored. The gates are secured. The staff remain loyal. No one realizes that you walk the perimeter at night with a weapon tucked inside your sleeve, listening for more than wind. You write letters to your family, though they become shorter each time. Your mother replies with measured phrases, always careful, always vague. Your father's handwriting appears once, a brief line about duty and the honour of good wives. You burn the letter after reading it twice, not out of spite, but necessity. There's no room for sentiment here. Not when every day feels like balancing on the edge of a blade you're not supposed to own. Your quarters are comfortable, but cold. The walls are clean, but bare. You sit alone each evening, drinking tea that tastes like memory. There is no laughter in the house, no music, no conversations that aren't about deliveries or cleaning schedules. You're not mistreated, you're simply forgotten. Like a bell that's been wrapped in cloth, still capable of sound, but muffled beyond recognition. And under the floorboards, the naginata waits, wrapped in its cloth, hidden beneath layers of quiet and dust. You don't take it out often anymore, but you think about it constantly. You think about the weight, the reach, the way it felt when you were allowed to move without apology. You wonder how many other women sit like this, in other rooms, behind other doors, remembering the same things and saying nothing. You sip your tea, adjust your robe, and listen to the house breathe. No footsteps, no voices, just the steady, aching stillness of a life built on obedience. You are a wife now, a manager, a presence, and beneath it all still, a blade. Time passes quietly, as it often does when nothing is asked of you. The seasons shift with polite indifference. The plum blossoms come and go. One day, servant whispers of war on the horizon. She says it softly, half laughing, as if the word itself is too large for her mouth. Her hands never stop moving as she speaks, folding laundry, kneading rice flour into paste, sweeping ash from the brazier. She doesn't look at you directly, but the message is there, nestled inside the rhythm of daily tasks. The clans are stirring. Borders are shifting. Someone's lord insulted someone else's ancestor, and now villages are disappearing like spilled ink. The Sengoku period, they say, has begun in earnest, as if it were a festival, as if it were something you could mark on a calendar and prepare snacks for. You nod and say nothing, but you hear the tension behind her voice, the speed in her steps, the way the other servants exchange glances when the gate creaks, or a messenger arrives unexpectedly. Your husband is gone again, off somewhere inspecting fields that may soon be battlegrounds. You're told not to worry. You're told he is safe, well regarded, clever. You're told these things often, and always by people who don't know what safe means when war becomes weather. The changes begin slowly. Fewer visitors, more locked chests, men in armour passing through town, with their eyes narrowed and their swords freshly polished. The head steward starts keeping inventories more frequently: rice, sake, salt, cloth, oil, rope. You are asked to ensure that the household maintains its stores, but does not appear too well stocked. It would be impolite, after all, to look inviting to passing armies. You ask if your husband will be returning soon. The steward bows low and says he does not know. You ask if a letter will be sent. The steward bows lower and says that such things are often delayed in times like these. You don't ask a third question. There's no need to embarrass either of you with the pretense that answers are still part of your role. The household shifts into quiet preparation. Armour is removed from storage and aired in the sun. Old weapons are cleaned and stacked in corners where they can be accidentally found if the house is searched. The servants are taught how to seal doors from the inside. You're given new keys, heavy and cold. The shutters are tested, the walls reinforced. There is talk of sandbags, of boiling water, of what to do if the gate falls. But no one says the word fight. The women are told to be ready to guard supplies, to hide valuables, to remain calm. The implication is clear: endure, preserve, and survive, so that the men have something to come back to. The only battles you're meant to fight are against hunger, fire, and fear. The ones without songs, the ones without flags. No one mentions that you once trained for this, that your mother taught you how to strike at the knee, how to spot a spear before it lands, how to steady your breath when surrounded, that your naginata lies beneath your floorboards, patient and sharp. You are not asked if you can fight. You are not told that you shouldn't. You are simply not mentioned at all. Your days return to routine, but the edges are frayed. Every knock at the gate is met with a held breath. Every letter that arrives is examined for bloodstains before it's handed over. The servants begin to pray more loudly. The guards begin to speak more softly. You walk the halls at night and find yourself counting the number of steps it would take to reach each entrance. How many heartbeats to unlock the supply room? How many seconds to draw and strike? You don't train openly. There's no ceremony to it anymore. Just habit. Just muscle. In the quiet hours before dawn, you stretch your limbs and practice forms with a length of bamboo. It's not enough. It never was. But it reminds you who you are beneath the robes and titles and silences. You wrap your wrists not to protect them, but to feel the tension, the readiness, the thing that was never unlearned, only buried. One morning while inspecting the storehouses, you find a young servant girl trying to lift a sack of rice, nearly twice her weight. She startles when you approach, expecting rebuke. Instead, you crouch beside her, show her how to balance her footing, how to shift the weight to her hips, how to breathe while she moves. You say nothing about the war. You don't need to. Her eyes already know what's coming. Later that evening, as you sip tea alone, the hills beyond the estate turn orange with the sunset. The light is too beautiful for what you're feeling. You walk to your chamber, lift the tatami mat, and open the floorboard. The naginata is exactly where you left it, wrapped, oiled, waiting. You unwrap it slowly, as if disturbing something sacred. The blade glints softly in the fading light. You run a cloth over the steel with quiet reverence. Not for ceremony, but for readiness. Outside, the cicadas sing like nothing is wrong, like the world hasn't begun to split along its seams. You sit by the window with the weapon across your lap and stare out toward the road. You wait for a messenger, a letter, a sign, a rider with news, something that will confirm the storm has arrived. But no horse appears, no shadow on the path, just the slow sinking of the sun and the endless, indifferent rustle of leaves. You sit for a long time in that cold, quiet room, the naginata warm from your hands. You're not afraid, not exactly. You've felt fear before, real fear, the kind that hisses beneath your ribs and shortens your breath. This is something different, a calm that comes when you stop hoping for permission, when you realise no one is coming to tell you what you already know. You look out at the hills, still and gold in the dying light, and wait for a horse that doesn't come. The men ride out at dawn, no fanfare, no speech, just the dull clatter of hooves on packed earth, the creak of saddle leather, and the low murmur of voices too tired for bravado. Your husband doesn't say goodbye. He nods once in your direction, the way one acknowledges a particularly sturdy gait or a well-packed saddlebag, and then turns his horse without hesitation. You stand beneath the eaves and bow as expected, your face calm, your hands folded neatly in front of you. Inside your sleeves, your fingers tremble. Once they're gone, the house feels instantly larger and somehow smaller. The silence becomes oppressive. The echo of every step, every breath, carries farther than it should. The courtyard, once filled with movement and purpose, now holds only the wind. You look around and realise there are no warriors left, no men with blades, no guards posted at the outer wall. Just servants, just elders, just you. No one tells you the house is yours to protect. No one hands you a key or places a scroll in your palm proclaiming your authority. But when the steward turns to you for instruction, and the cook asks where to move the rice barrels, and the gardener inquires if the back gate should be barred at night, you understand what has happened. You are in charge, not by design, not by appointment, but because there is no one else left. You respond quietly, efficiently, assign tasks, check locks, inventory supplies. You do what needs to be done, not because you crave control, you don't, but because the alternative is chaos. You sleep less, eat less, spend your days pacing the perimeter, listening for sounds that aren't wind or birds, or your own blood in your ears. The others watch you with a mix of caution and relief. No one questions your authority, but no one names it either. The nights are the worst. Every creak in the floorboards feels like footsteps. Every gust against the shutters becomes a prelude to invasion. You try not to show it. You drink bitter tea to keep your hands steady and recite poetry in your head to slow your breathing. You lie awake and listen to the house settle, its bones groaning in the dark, and imagine how long it would take to wake the others if someone came with fire and steel. You think often of your mother, of her silence, her precision, the way she never told you what she feared, only what you must do. You understand her better now, the difference between duty and desire, between strength and choice. You never wanted this, but it's yours all the same. The naginata is no longer hidden. You keep it beside your sleeping mat now, unwrapped, oiled, ready. When you walk the halls at night, it moves with you like a shadow. The weight is comforting, not because it makes you feel powerful, but because it reminds you that you still exist beneath the layers of ceremony and obedience. You are not just a wife, not just a caretaker. You are something sharp, something with edges. Word spreads slowly. A skirmish in the neighbouring province, a fire at a border town, a messenger robbed not far from your estate. You tighten the guard schedule, reposition supplies, move the elderly into rooms farther from the gate. You send letters, though you doubt they'll reach anyone in time. You receive none in return. Your husband has not written. Neither has your family. Whether they are too busy, too far, or simply unwilling to acknowledge your situation, you don't know. You stop expecting an answer. One morning a child runs to you wide-eyed and breathless. He says there's someone at the edge of the road, a figure watching the estate from the hilltop. You go yourself, naginata in hand. By the time you reach the gate, the hill is empty. Nothing but wind and trees. You stand there for a long time, scanning the horizon, your stomach churning in a slow, low circle. It might have been nothing, or it might have been the beginning. That night, you move through the house securing everything twice. The windows are barred, the doors latched. Buckets of water are stationed at every threshold. The staff are silent but quick, following your instructions without question. They're scared, but they trust you. That should feel like comfort. It doesn't. The next day, the steward informs you that the last of the guards has left, called away to protect a supply route farther east. He apologizes, though it isn't his fault. You nod, thank him, and excuse yourself. You don't want the others to see your hands shaking. You go to the armor chest. You haven't opened it in months. Inside, everything smells of dust and age. The chest plate fits tighter than you remember. The shoulder guards chafe. The helmet feels too heavy. The tie's awkward. But you force yourself into each piece, fastening the cords with fingers that twitch more than they should. The armor was made for a man's body. You adjust what you can, ignore what you can't. At dusk, you stand in the courtyard with the naginata in your grip and watch the sun sink behind the trees. No horns sound, no banners wave. There is no declaration, no ceremony, just the quiet, growing certainty that whatever is coming, it is coming for you first. You walk to the gate. The hinges creak as you close it. The bar is heavier than you expected, and it takes all your weight to slide it into place. You hear the latch catch with a dull final sound. Then you turn, adjust the strap at your shoulder, and tie your armor with hands that will not stop shaking. No one is coming. Not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but the gate is closed, and you are what's left. You begin the drills quietly, without ceremony. The housemaids are the first. They arrive early, blinking sleep from their eyes, their hands still raw from scrubbing pots and kneading dough. You hand them wooden poles, broom handles, curtain rods, anything long and vaguely balanced, and show them how to stand. Feet apart, knees soft, grip firm but not tense. You correct their posture with the same calm you once reserved for arranging flowers, but now every movement feels sharper, more urgent. They don't understand at first. They think it's a kind of exercise, a ritual to pass the time, until you demonstrate where the ribs are softest. Then they stop smiling. The elderly retainers come next. Some of them fought once, long ago, in skirmishes so distant the names of the enemies have been lost. Their movements are stiff, their joints unreliable, but their eyes are clear. They listen, they remember. One of them asks if you have a plan for the courtyard. Another suggests repositioning the cooking oil. They know, as you do, that a castle without warriors becomes a kitchen with ambition. So you turn it into one because it's all you have. The weapons you gather are mismatched and pitiful. There are a few old spears, their hafts splintered and bindings loose, a hunting bow with a crack near the grip, a set of short swords that haven't been sharpened since the last heir was born. But still, you inventory them. Still, you assign them. Each item finds a hand. Each hand is taught where to strike. You sketch crude maps of the house layout in charcoal and show where to fall back if the gates fail, where to light the signal fire, where to hide the rice and water. Your handwriting is steady. Your voice is clear. No one asks why you're the one giving orders. You suspect they already know. You boil water and test how long it takes to carry a full pot from the stove to the veranda. You organise the children into runners, couriers and watchers. They memorise whistle calls and knot signals, eyes wide with the thrill of being important. You teach them how to bar a door, how to move through shadows, how to spot the edge of a blade in torchlight. You do not teach them to fight, except one. The boy who lost his parents to a raid last spring. The one who doesn't flinch when the dogs bark. You give him a dagger and teach him to stab low and fast. He doesn't blink. You hate yourself a little and you keep going. The plan is not good, it is not polished or clever or worthy of legend, but it is a plan. You designate full back rooms, and escape routes. You stock dried beans and salted fish in the basement. You fill buckets with sand and place them beside every lamp. You drill the others twice a day, once at dawn, once at dusk, until they stop giggling when they swing, until they start to breathe from their bellies, until their feet move without thinking. You become a ghost in your own house, drifting from station to station, correcting a grip here, adjusting a knot there, always watching, always circling. The others begin to rely on you in small ways. They wait for your nod before locking the shutters. They glance toward you when a dog barks in the distance. You never raise your voice, never demand attention, never stand at the head of a line. But they follow you anyway, because they are scared, because you are not, or because you've gotten better at pretending. You tell yourself that fear is a tool, that you can shape it like iron if you hold it long enough. But some nights, when the others are sleeping and the fire has burned low, you kneel alone in the corridor and let the silence fold around you. Your armour is near your mat. Your naginata lies beside it, polished and gleaming. You look at them and wonder what kind of person chooses to lead others to the edge of a cliff with no rope. Then you remember no one chose you. You simply didn't step back when the others did. There is a kind of pride in what you've built, not the bright, swelling kind that poets write about, but something quieter, heavier. You see it in the way the housemaids hold their spears without fumbling, in the way the old men sit straighter after morning drills, in the way the children mimic your walk, believing it makes them invisible. You are preparing them to survive, and they believe you can. That might be the worst part. No one will remember this. If you succeed, if the estate remains standing, the stories will be told about the lord who owned it, the men who died defending it, the distant strategies that saved it. If you fail, there will be no one left to speak. You've trained yourself to accept that. You even believe it most of the time. But sometimes, when a servant thanks you with a bowed head or a child grins after landing a clean strike on a stuffed sack, something stirs in your chest. An ache, maybe, or a memory that hasn't yet been made. You silence it quickly. You have work to do. The water must be boiled again, the tools counted, the escape routes tested, and the boy, the one with the dagger, needs to learn where to aim on a man's thigh if the chest is too high. You don't flinch when you show him. You don't pause when he asks if he should run afterward. You just nod. You teach him to stab low and run fast, and then you move on to the next lesson. You don't know when preparation stops being hypothetical. There's no horn, no messenger, no sign from the gods. One night, you drill by lamplight. The next morning, you wake to the wind carrying a smell that doesn't belong. Oil, sweat, something metallic. The servants move a little faster. The birds go silent. You tighten the straps on your armour and check the barricades again. Not because anything has happened, but because something is about to. And then it does. The first arrow hits the outer gate with a dull, splintering thunk that never quite leaves your ears. You don't see it land. You only hear the sound, the kind that doesn't echo, but sinks into the wood like a tooth. Then another, and suddenly the silence you've been drowning in for months is gone, replaced by 1,000 small disasters, unfolding at once. Someone shouts, a pot crashes, a dog begins barking and doesn't stop. You don't run. You walk, briskly, steadily, toward the gate. The servants you pass are frozen, clutching baskets, bowls, bundles of kindling. You give them instructions as you go, sharp and calm. Barricade the side entrance, move the children to the cellar, bring the water to the upper floor. They obey, not because your voice is loud, but because it is the only one not shaking. The sky is the colour of wet ash, the kind of grey that makes shadows blur and depth disappear. The attackers haven't breached the gate yet, but they're close. You can hear the thrum of movement beyond the wall, boots in the mud, men barking orders, the groan of something heavy being wheeled forward. A battering ram, maybe, or a cart with fire barrels. You raise your hand, and the defenders take their positions. It isn't a proper formation. You aren't a general. They aren't soldiers. just cooks with knives, gardeners with sickles, maids with sharpened sticks. An old retainer stands beside you, sword drawn, shoulders trembling not from fear, but from age. You nod once. He nods back. There's no need to say anything. Words are heavy, and you'll need every breath soon. The first breach comes fast when a section of the outer wall gives way with a sickening crack. They've found a weakness you never knew was there. Fire is the next weapon. A flaming arrow sails overhead and lands on the thatched roof of the storage shed. You hear the dry whoosh as it catches. Someone screams. You don't turn. You issue orders, bucket chain, contain the blaze, protect the food stores. Then you draw your weapon. The naginata is a part of you now. Your hands move without thought, adjusting your stance, checking the weight. You can't remember the last time it felt unfamiliar. The moment the gate bursts inward, you raise the blade. The attackers come in waves, rough men in piecemeal armour, shouting, swinging wildly. They expect chaos. They expect panic. What they find is a woman who doesn't flinch and a group of servants who've been trained to hold a line. The first man who charges you goes down quickly. Your blade slices across his midsection and sends him sprawling. You don't watch him fall. You move to the next. Your strikes aren't elegant. They aren't measured or beautiful. They are brutal, efficient, aimed for tendons and joints. You remember everything your mother taught you. Where the armour fails, where the body bends, where the pain lives. To your left, a housemaid drives a spear into a man's thigh and is knocked to the ground for her trouble. You step between her and the second attacker, parry his blade, and drive your elbow into his throat. He drops choking. You don't wait to see if he recovers. The maid scrambles to her feet and returns to her position. Her hands are covered in blood. You don't know whose. It doesn't matter. Smoke pours through the courtyard. Somewhere, the storage shed collapses in a burst of sparks and flame. A wave of heat rolls over you, choking and thick. Your lungs seize. You lower your stance and pull a strip of cloth over your mouth. The attackers hesitate. They weren't prepared for resistance, let alone this. You press the advantage. You push them back toward the broken gate. You fight for what feels like hours but might be minutes. Time folds in on itself. There is no rhythm to this, no clear arc. Just moments, a blade flashing near your cheek. The hiss of boiling water poured from above. The sickening crunch of a body hitting the stairs. You see faces you recognise, contorted with fear and rage. You see people you trained swinging wildly, holding ground, falling. You don't cry out, not when your arm is sliced open, not when a man slams into your side and knocks the breath from your lungs, not when you see the old retainer slump forward, blood spilling from his mouth. You make no sound. You can't afford to. Your silence is your spine. The others scream. The air is filled with it, but your voice remains buried beneath your ribs, steady and cold. At some point they retreat. You don't know why. Maybe reinforcements are coming. Maybe they've lost too many. Maybe they thought you would fold after the first fire. You watch them pull back beyond the broken gate, dragging the wounded, shouting to each other in panicked bursts. You don't follow. You hold the line. You wait until the last of them is out of sight before you let yourself move again. The courtyard is wrecked. Smoke clings to every surface. The air tastes like ash and iron. The ground beneath your feet is slick with blood and water, and the blackened remnants of rice from a smashed barrel. One sleeve of your robe is torn away. A burn streaks across your neck, where a cinder landed. Your hands shake, but not from fear, from the weight of the weapon, from the adrenaline finally draining. You stand ankle deep in smoke and blood. Around you, the others begin to rise, slowly, painfully, as if returning from somewhere far away. You meet their eyes one by one. No one speaks. There's nothing to say. You held the gate, for now. You patch wounds with rice paste because there's no medicine left. The dried herbs were burned in the first fire, and the jars of ointment were shattered when the supply room wall collapsed. Now, you tear silk into strips and bind gashes with linen soaked in boiled water. You grind dried soybeans into paste to pack into deeper cuts. You press cloth against open skin and murmur instructions without softness. You don't flinch when people scream. You don't look away when they bleed. You can't. The siege does not come in waves anymore. It comes in a slow, steady crush. Each day blends into the next. Smoke, ash, silence, shouting, collapse. You measure time by the rations, not the sun. 1 bag of rice lasts 2 days. 1 jug of water, if rationed carefully, lasts 3. You reduce meals to thin porridge and water thickened with boiled roots. Hunger hums beneath everything. No one complains anymore. Complaints take energy. You sleep in the hallways now, in armour, with the naginata across your chest, like a question you never stop answering. When you do close your eyes, it's never for more than an hour. Dreams come quickly, full of noise and fire and the sounds of people calling your name, sometimes in gratitude, sometimes in blame. You wake without knowing which is worse. You rise, adjust your armour, and continue. The others look to you constantly. They ask where to station the guards, how to reinforce the shutters, whether to bury the dead or wait. You have no more answers than they do, but you give them anyway. A slow nod here, a quiet order there. You move from room to room like a ghost that forgot how to vanish. You don't sit, you don't rest, you don't stop long enough to feel. At night, when the embers burn low and the air thickens with smoke, you think of your mother. You remember the curve of her back as she swept the courtyard, the stillness in her face when your father dismissed her opinion with a raised hand, the strength in her silence. She never told you what she carried. But now, in the heat of this impossible moment, you understand. It wasn't just skill she passed on to you. It was something quieter, heavier. The knowledge that command is made of sacrifice, and leadership often means becoming the wall everyone else leans against, while pretending you don't feel the weight. You repeat her lessons in your mind when the fear claws too high in your throat. Stand firm, move quickly. Don't waste strength on what cannot be changed. You speak them to yourself like prayers, not because they bring comfort, but because they remind you that survival is often shaped in the absence of comfort. You grip your weapon tighter and walk another round through the smouldering halls. The walls hold, just barely, but the world inside them frays. A servant collapses from exhaustion while carrying water. An old retainer's cough turns wet, then red. A child cries in their sleep, calling for a mother who died on the 2nd day. You press your palm to their forehead and tell them they are safe. You lie with your voice steady. You lie like it's a skill you were born with. There is no time to mourn. When someone dies, you bow, cover the body, and move on. You write their name down in the ledger with a smudged brush and a hand that won't quite stop shaking. You remind yourself that remembering can come later. That grief is a luxury you'll allow yourself when it's over. If it ends, if you're still here to remember. For now, you give orders and reinforce door frames. You ration dried fish and draw new escape maps in charcoal on the walls. Some of the defenders falter. You see it in their eyes, that moment when the weight of what they've seen presses too deep. You don't yell. You place a hand on their shoulder. You give them a task. Something small, immediate, survivable. Sharpen this blade. Boil this pot. Move this bucket. Focus is more useful than hope. You give them just enough to keep them upright, and then you walk on. You fight twice more. Small breaches, probing attacks meant to wear you down. They do. You hold, but not without cost. The kitchen wall is blackened from smoke. The courtyard is streaked with blood. The rice stores are down to a few baskets. You keep track of what's left in your head, because writing it down feels too final. Too much like a confession. After the 3rd attack, the noise stops. No shouting, no flames, no bodies at the gate. You wait for another charge, but it doesn't come. Not yet. You allow yourself a single deep breath and step outside to survey the damage. The ground is soaked from overturned buckets. The air is thick with the sour stench of burnt wood and old wounds. You press your hand to your neck, where the bandage from the earlier burn sticks slightly. You press harder, just to feel something. Inside, the others begin to clean in silence. They sweep ash, patch cloth, stack broken boards in neat piles. It's not hope, not exactly. It's just habit, motion, the need to keep going. You walk the perimeter again and check the barricades. The gate holds. The shutters creak but stay closed. For now, the house remains. You know it won't last. You can feel the pressure building, like a storm circling just out of sight. But you don't say it aloud. You can't. So you nod to the guards, tighten the strap on your armour, and keep moving. Because they're watching you. Because they need to believe that what you've built can hold one more day, and because you haven't taught them how to mourn yet, only how to survive. You hear them scaling the rear wall just after midnight. No horns, no war cries, just the low scrape of wood against stone, the clink of metal on tile, the soft grunt of bodies trying not to breathe too loudly. You sit up instantly, blade already in hand, breath already steady. You were never asleep, just lying still, listening to the dark, the kind of sleep one pretends to have when exhaustion becomes irrelevant. You don't shout, you move, down the corridor, through the smoke-stained hall, barefoot and silent, until your heel hits the cold stone near the outer veranda. You pass a sleeping child and place a hand over her mouth before she can gasp at the sound of your armour. You whisper one word, cellar, and she nods, vanishing into the shadows with the ease of someone who's practiced fear. By the time you reach the rear gate, 3 others are already there. The kitchen maid with the scarred hands, the farmer's daughter who insisted on using a hoe like a polearm, and the elderly retainer who can barely lift his sword anymore, but refuses to lie down while the wall still stands. You nod to each in turn. No one speaks. There is no time. Then the wall gives. They don't blow it open. They climb, fast and quiet, and many. Too many. You glimpse their outlines in the moonlight. Lean bodies, worn armour, eyes bright with hunger. These aren't soldiers in search of glory. They're scavengers. Men who come after the war, not during it. They don't want a battle. They want a feast. But they find you instead. The first drops into the courtyard and barely has time to react before your naginata takes him through the thigh. He screams, folds, and another replaces him. Then another. You don't count. You don't breathe. You fight. Close now. Too close. The blade is almost too long. You swing wide and catch a man in the ribs. He crumples. Another grabs the shaft of your weapon and pulls. You let go, step in, and drive your elbow into his jaw with a satisfying crack. He stumbles. You draw your knife. The world narrows to flashes, moonlight on steel, the reek of sweat and panic, the weight of someone's body slamming into yours. You move through it like smoke, like memory, like instinct. The naginata is gone. It doesn't matter. You fight with fists, elbows, knees. The knife finds gaps in armour. Blood finds the floor. A scream cuts through the night. Not yours. Not yet. The old retainer goes down first. You see it from the corner of your eye. A figure rising behind him. A blade falling in a clumsy arc. A wet sound that thuds into the earth. You don't cry out. You can't. You press forward, shoving a broken spear into the stomach of the next man, who lunges at you. He collapses onto your arm. You shove him off with a grunt and turn to check the others. The kitchen maid is still fighting. She's down to a kitchen knife, her apron torn and soaked with blood. But her eyes are sharp and her footing solid. The farmer's daughter has a black eye and a split lip, but she swings her hoe like a soldier. She plants her feet beside yours and doesn't move. That's all you can ask. One of the attackers grabs your wrist hard. You twist free and punch him in the throat. He chokes, drops his blade, and stumbles back. You don't follow. There are too many. They keep coming, pouring in through the broken shutters, over the garden wall, through the narrow side passage you thought was too steep to climb. You were wrong. It doesn't matter now. Something explodes behind you. A lantern, maybe. The air fills with smoke. Someone shouts to fall back. You don't know who. You retreat into the hallway, dragging the maid with you, yelling for the others to regroup. There's no formation, no strategy. Just survival. Just feet slamming on boards, hands scrambling for grip, mouths open and gasping. You lose track of time. Maybe it's minutes, maybe hours. The hallway becomes a tunnel of heat and noise and impact. You fight until your arms ache, until your knees wobble, until your mouth fills with the taste of iron and ash. You lose the knife at some point. Pick up another. Or maybe it's the same one. You can't tell anymore. Bodies hit the ground. Some move, some don't. You step over one with your jaw clenched so tightly you feel your teeth grind. A man lunges at you from a doorway. You catch his blade on your forearm. Pain flares white hot. And before he can pull away, you shove him back against the wall and drive the knife under his chin. He dies quickly, or maybe slowly. You don't check. You only feel the warmth of his blood on your hand and the weight of his collapse against your legs. You don't pull the blade free. You just breathe, chest heaving, arms slick with something that used to be someone. You step back, slide against the wall, and crouch beside the remains of what used to be a doorway. The kitchen maid drops beside you, gasping. Her hands are shaking, her face streaked with soot and blood, and something like disbelief. You hand her a flask of water and take one sip yourself. It's warm, tastes like copper. You swallow it anyway. Somewhere the screams are fading. The attackers are retreating again, or dying, or deciding you're not worth the effort. The night grows quiet, not safe, just quiet. You sit in that silence, watching the shadows shift, feeling the sting of a shallow cut across your collarbone and the ache in your spine. Your hand still grips a blade. You slit a man's throat tonight. You watched him die, and you felt nothing. You drink more water and wait for the next sound. The enemy withdraws not with ceremony, but with silence. No banners lowered, no surrender declared. Just the sound of retreating footsteps, scattered gear, and the groan of wounded men being dragged through the mud. You don't chase them. You don't raise a cheer. You simply watch from the edge of the scorched garden, weapon still in hand, unsure whether it's over or simply paused. Your hands are blistered. Your hair is singed, sticking to your neck in damp, acrid strands. The skin along your forearms is red and cracked where fire kissed you too closely. Your robe is shredded in places, and your armour bears dents that weren't there yesterday. Every muscle in your body aches with the dull certainty of something overused but not broken. You survived. Again. The estate is half ruin. The rear wall is a jagged line of blackened timber. The storeroom roof has caved in. Ash drifts through the hallways like a second fog. Buckets lie overturned in the courtyard. The water long since spilled into the blood-soaked earth. The garden is unrecognisable. Scorched, trampled, hacked down to stumps. The plum tree your mother planted when you were married is little more than charred bark. You don't mourn it yet. You don't have the time. Inside, the survivors move like ghosts. A woman with a broken arm sweeps debris from the corridor using only one hand. A boy whose voice hasn't yet changed carries a basin of water that sloshes against his chest. The kitchen maid, now missing a piece of her left ear, kneels over a pot of rice and stirs it with mechanical care. No one speaks unless they have to. When they do, it's in murmurs, as if afraid sound will bring the enemy back. You do what must be done. You organise the injured. You assign sleeping spaces for those who no longer have beds. You delegate repairs not to tuer, not to rebuild, not yet, but to make things less likely to collapse during the night. You ration what food is left. You order water boiled. You make decisions with a kind of detached clarity that feels like floating inside your own body. You know you should collapse, but someone has to keep the shape of the world intact. You find the old retainer's body at dawn. He's half covered by a fallen screen, curled inward like someone trying to protect their ribs. His sword is still in hand. You crouch beside him and bow your head. No one else is awake, no one else sees. You press your fingers to his brow and whisper a thank you. Not for dying, for staying, for being one of the few who didn't need you to prove you were worth following. By midday, the rain comes. It falls softly, not enough to clean anything, just enough to spread soot into streaks and soak your bandages. You stand in it anyway, letting the cool trickle down your face and over your hands. You wonder if this is what purification feels like. Not forgiveness, but weather. Something impersonal that simply happens to you. Reinforcements arrive in the afternoon. They come on horseback, well-armed and well-fed, shouting orders and carrying banners that have never seen fire. The sound of them fills the ruined courtyard like mockery. Their leader dismounts, glances around, and grimaces at the smell. His men begin issuing instructions before asking what's needed. One of them steps over a bloodstain, with his nose wrinkled, and mutters something about savagery. Another pokes a broken beam with the butt of his spear and announces that the estate was clearly neglected. You say nothing. You let them talk. Eventually, one of them realizes you're not a servant and addresses you directly. He asks how long the siege lasted. You tell him. He raises his eyebrows impressed. He asks who commanded the defense. You look him in the eye and say nothing. He assumes you didn't understand the question and moves on. You don't correct him. You're too tired to rewrite the story before it's even finished being told. At dusk, the gates creak open again. Your husband returns with 2 retainers and the faint smell of sandalwood. His robes are clean. His expression is grave, carefully arranged for the occasion. He surveys the courtyard, nods once, and sighs as if the damage inconveniences him. He walks to you and says your name like it's a task, not a greeting. You bow as custom dictates. He praises the house for holding. He thanks the gods. He does not thank you. That night, there is a formal meal, sparse but ceremonial. He eats slowly, asks questions about the rice stores, and discusses the politics of the neighbouring province. You sit beside him in your patched robe with your arm bound in a sling, nodding when appropriate. The servants move silently around you, refilling cups and removing bowls, as if nothing happened. As if nothing ever does. When he excuses himself for rest, you remain at the table a while longer, watching the last candle gutter in its dish. The flame dances in the reflection of a spilled drop of tea. You think of the naginata tucked away once more beneath the floorboards. Not discarded, just hidden again, like you. You sleep that night without armour for the first time in weeks. Your hands throb. Your back aches. Your dreams are full of ash. You wake before dawn, alone in the cold room, and dress without sound. Outside, the rain has stopped. The air smells of wet stone and memory. The estate is quieter now, held together by ritual and pretense. Reinforcements patrol the gates. Your husband sits in the main hall again. Life is returning, in its usual shape, in its usual order. And you, the one who held the gate, who stitched wounds and slit throats, and burned your hands keeping this place upright, you are invisible again. A bard arrives 3 days after the gates reopen. He's young, with smooth hands and an untouched flute. He wears his robes like someone who's never mended them, and his voice carries in the courtyard like smoke over still water. He came with the reinforcements, or perhaps followed them, drawn by rumour and the scent of aftermath. Someone gives him a seat and a cup of plum wine. He begins to compose before asking a single question. By sunset, he's already performing. His song is about a brave and noble lord who held his estate against overwhelming odds, about a tactical mind that foresaw the enemy's moves, a hand that steadied the frightened, a man who stood firm in the face of fire and chaos. The lyrics are clean, the melody is bright. The story is entirely fiction, but it's easy on the ears, and it pleases the guests. You stand at the edge of the gathering, still wrapped in bandages, your hair uneven where the flames caught it. and listen as the world is rewritten in real time. The courtyard where you bled is now a symbol of masculine resolve. The servants you trained are transformed into loyal followers who drew courage from a man who wasn't even there. Your name isn't mentioned, not once. Your husband doesn't object. He smiles politely, as if the praise embarrasses him, though he does nothing to correct it. He accepts compliments with bowed head and modest words. He even thanks the bard and offers him a cushion and more wine. Later, when one of the retainers mentions the kitchen maid who fought beside you, your husband waves it off. A touching detail, he says, but not essential. You're not surprised, but the predictability doesn't dull the bitterness. It just makes it heavier, familiar. You carry it the way you carry bruises, tender, unseen, and not worth mentioning. The women you trained know the truth. The servants who bled beside you know the truth. But they're not the ones writing songs or reporting to the capital. They just pour the tea and clear the plates. In the days that follow, you're given quiet praise in private. A steward thanks you for your discipline. A maid leaves an extra steamed bun beside your bowl. A child bows so deeply you fear he might topple forward. These gestures mean more than the bard's nonsense, but they're also small, carefully hidden. Not the sort of thanks anyone records. You're offered a room in the inner house again. You take it without protest. You eat your meals without complaint. You rise early and begin managing the household again, because someone has to, and because pretending not to mind is easier than explaining what it feels like to watch your story get buried while you're still breathing. Your husband starts spending more time at home. He hosts visitors, holds court, discusses strategy with men who now see him as a war hero. You sit through their meetings, serving tea and smiling when appropriate. Occasionally, one of them glances your way and says something about your poise or resilience. One even refers to you as a true samurai wife. You nod and thank him. You do not remind him that your hands have slit more throats than his. You do not say that his sword is too clean. The naginata is returned to the storehouse, not hidden this time, just set aside, an object without urgency, a symbol of something that no longer matters. You oil it once more, out of habit, then wrap it in cloth and place it near the rear wall, where the shadows fall deepest. No one helps you. No one asks why your hands linger on the blade, longer than they should. You resume your needlework. The fabric stretches beneath your fingers, the way it always has. Familiar, forgiving. You stitch flowers onto cushion covers, mend worn robes, embroider birds onto banners. You do it well. Your hands are steady. You thread the needle without squinting. You bleed into the cloth only once, and no one notices. You sew as if nothing has changed, as if you didn't kill men in this same robe, as if the sleeves weren't once soaked in blood. Sometimes, in the quiet of the afternoon, you hear the bard practicing in the garden. He's polishing the tale for performance in the city. His verses are smoother now, the lies more elegant. He sings of courage and strategy and sacrifice, but not yours. Never yours. You sip your tea and watch the thread loop through silk. You imagine what might have happened if you died in that courtyard, if the final note of your life had been silence instead of survival. Would the song be different? Would they still have given the credit to someone else? Maybe, probably. You'll never know. The armour you wore sits in the corner of your room. No one has asked what to do with it. The servants don't touch it. Your husband never mentions it. You consider storing it away, but something stops you. So it stays a silent, rusting witness to what was never said, never sung, never acknowledged. Each dent tells a story no one will listen to. Each scrape is a record you're not allowed to cite. And so you thread another needle. You nod when spoken to. You pour tea with both hands. You balance your silence on the edge of civility and sip it like it's enough. You're no longer a warrior, at least not one anyone talks about. You're just a wife, just a seamstress, just a shadow in a house that still stands. You sew the wound shut, neatly, precisely, and never speak of what bled underneath. You grow older, though not all at once. Your hair greys slowly, the strands softening at the temples before spreading like frost. Your knees begin to ache in the cold. Your hands, once so steady with a blade, begin to tremble after long days of sewing. But you don't complain. Aging is expected of you now. It fits the role you've been assigned. You grow into invisibility the way a tree grows into shadow, slowly, quietly, and without resistance. Your body remembers the fight even if no one else does. When you climb stairs, your shoulder twinges where a blade once glanced off bone. When you lift water buckets, your grip still adjusts instinctively for weight distribution. You still rise in the middle of the night at the sound of thunder, heart racing, fingers curling around nothing. The house is quiet, and the danger is long gone. But your muscles do not believe it. They keep watch long after the gates were declared secure. Time smooths over everything. The courtyard is rebuilt. The walls are restuccoed. Fresh banners fly where smoke once rose. Servants come and go. Children grow up, marry, move away. Your husband continues his duties, honoured now as a defender of the province. His reputation thrives in the retelling. He grows rounder, slower, more ceremonial. He asks for tea and speaks of diplomacy. He never mentions the siege. You learn to stop mentioning it too. It isn't a conscious decision. It happens the way silence always does. Gradually, then completely. At first you answer vaguely when people ask about those days. Later, you change the subject. Eventually, they stop asking. The war fades into something like legend, and you are not in it. You are not bitter, or rather you are, but in a way that is quiet enough to pass as contentment. You fold it into yourself. You make it small enough to carry. The world changes around you. The Tokugawa era begins. Peace is declared, and with it comes a new code, more orderly, more rigid, more merciless in its expectations. Women are praised for obedience, not strength. They are urged towards silence, modesty, child-rearing. The naginata is reclassified as a symbol of domestic virtue rather than a weapon of war. Girls are taught to handle it with grace, not precision. The blade becomes performance, the fight becomes myth. You watch this happen and say nothing. You teach the girls what the books say to teach, how to stand, how to bow, how to hold a practice blade, as if it were an accessory, not a lifeline. You correct their posture and smile when they smile back, unaware that what they are learning is a shadow. The real lessons are gone, buried. Not because they were wrong, but because they were inconvenient. You keep the armour in storage now. The naginata remains oiled but untouched. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the evening, you unwrap it and run your fingers along the shaft. You don't lift it anymore. Your joints won't allow it, but you sit beside it, as if in conversation, remembering the weight, the balance, the certainty it once gave you. It is the only object in your life that has never lied to you. Your husband dies on a warm spring afternoon, his head resting on a pillow embroidered with chrysanthemums. The funeral is elaborate. Officials come from other provinces to pay respects. They speak of his wisdom, his courage, his legacy. They refer to the siege with reverence and gratitude. You stand beside the altar, veiled in white, and bow your head as they praise him for victories he never earned. No one mentions the women who fought. No one mentions the ones who died. You press your hands together and remain still. After his death, you move to a smaller house on the edge of the estate. You are referred to as the Dowager now, an honorary title, a polite way to frame your continued presence. You tend a small garden, you keep a shrine, you spend your days mending, reading, offering incense and watching the wind move through the bamboo outside your window. The servants still bow when they pass you, though they rarely look you in the eye. To them, you are part of the furniture, something to acknowledge, not engage. Years pass. You forget the names of people you once knew. You forget the precise number of wounds you took during the siege. You forget how long it lasted, how many days you went without sleep, what it felt like to hold a blade so tightly your palms bled. But you remember the faces of the women who stood beside you. You remember the child you taught to stab low and run fast. You remember the silence after it was all over, heavier than any scream. One day, a young woman visits the house. She's from a merchant family, educated, curious in the way only those untouched by war can afford to be. She brings you a gift, tea leaves wrapped in silk, and bows deeply before asking if you might tell her about the siege. Not the official version, she clarifies, the real one, the one that isn't in the bard's song. You smile at her, your hands fold neatly in your lap. You tilt your head and say that you remember very little, that you were only a housewife, that you spent most of those days in the kitchens, tending to the rice and trying not to get in anyone's way. She thanks you anyway. She bows again and leaves the tea behind. You watch her go, and for a moment you feel something press against your ribs. Not sorrow exactly, not pride, just the weight of everything you didn't say, everything you folded into silence. You sip the tea that night and find it bitter, not unpleasant, just honest. You die quietly, as most women do, not in battle, not in ceremony, not in any way that compels the world to pause. You die in your bed, surrounded by woven mats, folded blankets, and the rustling silence of people waiting in the next room. There is no panic, no grand farewell. Your breath simply slows, stutters, and then doesn't return. The room grows still. Someone closes the shutters against the wind. Someone else begins boiling water. There is a funeral, of course. There always is, a proper one. The rites are performed, the incense burned, the priest summoned. Your name is written neatly on a tablet and placed on the family altar. Your birth and death are recorded side by side, 2 polite strokes of ink binding a life that lasted decades into a single line of calligraphy. The words are chosen carefully. They are appropriate. They are bland. They say you are dutiful, generous, respectable. The children bow, the grandchildren fidget. The great-grandchildren, if there are any, do not understand who you were, only that they're meant to be quiet and wear pale robes. They repeat prayers written generations ago and eat pickled vegetables after the ceremony. Later they will tell their friends about the incense and the strange taste of the funeral sweets, but they won't remember your voice. They never heard it. There is no mention of the siege, no talk of weapons or walls or smoke or blood. The naginata is still on display in another household, behind glass, admired for its elegance. You are not mentioned in its description. The documents that bear your name have been boxed, misfiled, or lost. No one thinks to look. No one thinks there is anything missing. The gaps are not noticed because they are not loud. That is the nature of silence. It doesn't announce itself. It simply waits until no one remembers there was something to hear. Your absence becomes part of the structure. The house carries on. The name continues. The garden is pruned. The tatami replaced. The scrolls rotated on schedule. Time does not falter. It folds neatly around what was left unsaid and keeps moving. Your room is cleared. Your robes are donated. The armour is stored elsewhere. The space you filled becomes another empty seat, another quiet hallway, another story people don't tell because they don't know there is one. But the weight of your absence lingers, not loudly, not tragically. It settles in the corners, in the way someone glances at the wall where a painting used to hang, in the echo of footsteps through the rear corridor, in the story someone tries to recall and gives up on midway because the names are too difficult and the details don't seem important. You are not remembered, but you are not entirely gone. You've been folded into the margins where women live when history runs out of space. Sometimes someone lights incense at your grave, not because they know you, not because they were taught your story, but because they were raised well, because it is polite, because your stone still stands among others, with your family's crest carved at the top. The kanji of your name is softened by rain, your dates dulled by time, but the line is still there. People walk past it without reading it, but they bow. That counts for something. Your naginata is passed down, but not the story behind it. It is given to a granddaughter with long fingers and a curious smile, who spins it clumsily in the courtyard before a festival and laughs when it knocks over a lantern. She is told it belonged to you, that it is old, that it should be respected. She bows to it once and then hangs it on the wall of her room. Later, it will be mounted in a case, its edge dulled and lacquered, the cloth bindings replaced with silk, the colour of cherry blossoms. No one will hold it the way you did. No one will need to. The weapon becomes part of the household's collection, a symbol not of war, but of refinement. Guests will admire its curve, its polish, the craftsmanship of its fittings. They'll comment on how rare it is for such a thing to survive in such good condition. Someone will mention that it was once used by a woman of noble bearing, perhaps even in a time of unrest. The story will drift somewhere between artifact and myth. The children will nod politely and return to their games. Your family thrives in the years that follow. The estate is rebuilt more than once. The name of your husband is carved into several monuments, and his lineage is recorded with careful brushstrokes on official scrolls. You remain in the margins, referenced occasionally as a supportive wife, a skilled homemaker, a woman of discipline. The siege is mentioned briefly in family histories, but always in the passive voice. The house was attacked, the defenders held. The men returned. There is no sentence that begins with your name. Even in death, your legacy is folded into formality. Your funeral is respectful, proper, restrained. There are no tales told, no war songs sung, no banners dipped in your honour. A priest chants the correct phrases, a niece recites a poem. The incense is thick in the air. Your grandchildren bow deeply and press their foreheads to the mat, and none of them truly understand what it is they're grieving. Not because they don't care, but because they were never told. The silence becomes permanent, not out of malice, but out of convenience. The new era is one of order and ceremony. Women are praised for their gentleness, their compliance, their absence from conflict. Stories like yours do not fit. They raise too many questions, too many complications. So your blade remains on display, your robes are donated to the temple, and your name fades into the spaces between records. Time moves forward without asking permission. Generations pass, names blur. The estate becomes a smaller one, then is sold, then remembered only in regional maps and faded ledgers. The naginata is boxed up, passed down again, eventually forgotten in an attic until someone rediscovers it and decides it should be preserved. A museum takes it in. It is cleaned, catalogued and labelled with a small placard. Edo period naginata, likely ceremonial. Origin, unknown. It hangs behind glass under soft lighting. No one suspects the edge once tasted blood. Occasionally, a visitor pauses in front of it, tilts their head, and says something about the beauty of old weapons. They do not ask who held it. They do not wonder what hands gripped it so tightly they bled. It is beautiful after all, and beauty, like obedience, rarely requires explanation. You are gone, but not entirely. The people who knew your name have passed, and the ones who knew your story never told it properly. But sometimes, in the quiet corners of libraries or archives, pieces of you surface. A list of provisions with notes in your handwriting. A ledger with your name signed beside rations distributed during the siege. A tattered scroll with an inventory of weapons, and one small annotation. Polished, returned to storage, made in a script that does not belong to any of the men recorded elsewhere. Years later, a historian combing through records on a minor conflict will pause over a volume of household accounts. It is brittle with age, the ink smudged in places, but on the back page where someone once scrawled notes in haste, a name appears. Yours, not prominently, not centred, just scratched into the margin beside a line that reads, "Last of the oil reserved, Southern Gate held." The historian will not know who you were, but they'll mark the page. They'll add your name to a footnote. They'll wonder quietly why it appears only once. No statues will be raised, no monuments carved, but the silence breaks. Just a little. Not loudly, not in the way songs do, but like a hairline crack through something once sealed too tightly. Enough for air to slip through. Enough for someone somewhere to ask a question. You will never be remembered the way your husband was, with plaques and public readings, but your story will not be entirely lost either. It will echo, faintly, in the spaces where record keepers made mistakes, in the scratches between facts, in the footnotes no one reads aloud, and the naginata still behind glass will catch the light a certain way one afternoon. A visitor will lean in closer. They'll wonder just for a moment if it was ever used, and for that instant, brief, quiet, unremarkable, you will be there again, in the space between memory and ash. That brings us to the end of tonight's story, stitched together from silence, buried beneath propriety, and left out of the records on purpose. If you're still listening, thank you for witnessing someone the world forgot, for hearing the voice of a woman who was never supposed to have one. History did not remember her, not in songs, not in scrolls, but now, for a little while, you did. If you'd like early access to more stories like this one, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Amanda Lamke. Sleep well.